Hey everyone, welcome to The Seven Eighths, a podcast to share stories on failures and rejections. There may not be any fairy tale endings in this podcast. My guests aren't past the mountain of struggle. In fact, some of them might still be in it. I hope this podcast serves as a forum for friends and acquaintances to exchange tales of defeat that make the 7/8ths part of our lives. You know, like the part of the iceberg that you can see. By sharing these stories, I hope we can all normalize failures and hence win over that fear of defeat. Because failing is just a part of living. I hope you will relate. Do leave me a note of feedback, and critique is welcome as well. You can find me on Twitter at FemNectar. Now, onto our episode. Welcome to episode 19 of The 7/8ths. This episode is a conversation between me and Tina Nayak about her journey through setbacks. Tina is a Berlin-based entrepreneur. Her latest startup, Useristics, helps tech startups understand their users better so they build products that the users can't live without. Prior to launching her own company, Tina oversaw marketing and growth at places like Babbel, Preply, and ZipDial, which was later acquired by Twitter. In this episode, Tina talks about the changes she took on in her career and life, struggling with explaining her role and impact, the setbacks she faced with her first startup, and dealing with grief. It's time to just sit down and listen. So how have you been, Tina? You've had a crazy ride.
I've been good. It's a tough question. I'm still learning to deal with the ride that I had. It's also a moment to pause and say, okay, I'm blessed. I'm grateful for the experiences I have.
When you moved back to India from the US, again, that was a transition. Even beyond that, then you and your husband started a company together.
That's right.
For you, it was almost like a double hit, right? Like one is you're moving back from the US to India. I'm sure that there were perceptions around it. And then second is going ahead and starting a company with your husband 10 years ago.
Exactly 10 years ago.
So that wasn't a norm 10 years ago.
Yeah, that.
Now we're talking.
I personally believe, and I've come to believe, that it's really, really important to have a line between the two and separate personal from work. So saying that, we learned a lot about each other and our relationship and coming out of it stronger. And in the sense that we not just understood each other as husband and wife, but also what it takes to run a business and how do you switch gears? Like now I'm the wife, I'm wearing the wife hat. Now I'm the mom, wearing the mom hat. And now I'm wearing the co-founder hat. So sometimes it used to be like, oh, the customer hasn't paid the invoice. And then I want to scream at him and say that you didn't follow up. After a point, it was like, I'm glad we are moving on with it. And just the second part of your question being, coming back to India, we heard that for almost 2 years. Everyone who met us asked us, why did you decide to come back? And I couldn't explain to them the H-4 visa situation, but I was not happy. And it was only because of my husband who was super, super supportive of my journey. Everything maps up somewhere, but it takes a whole lot of time to figure out into a very simple message as to what really happened.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting line that you just said, which is everything. I mean, the roads lead to somewhere. You have the map to that roads. You may not know where the roads lead to, but there is a plan.
Yes.
Right? That's fascinating. So after you guys moved back, what was the company that you started working together?
Yeah, we started this company called Natural Mantra. So Natural Mantra was a natural organic marketplace. So my daughter had eczema, and she was very, very sensitive to any products that were put. And in US, thankfully, we used to have a lot of options where you could read the ingredients. But in 2011, when we moved back, that was not an option, and it was super hard. So we went back and said, okay, this is a blank space in the market. Let's do it. And I think we were just plain too early in the market with a really good idea. So that's
for sure.
We were one of those people or founder companies that were just timing was a factor. And also e-commerce and all of these areas were very, very new,
nascent
and early. Very nascent, yes. But still budding, moving faster. Our opportunity cost was significantly high, and then we kind of took an exit out of the company. I moved into the tech world, which was really fascinating, and I felt I found myself there.
So you had just exited from a company that you were hoping to kind of keep working, and that was with your husband.
That's right.
Did that sting?
Of course it did. It's like when you're founding your first company. I made the mistake of looking at my startup as my baby. It's not your baby. It's a business. And that's what I learned from it, that, I was nurturing something that was important. But one of the biggest lessons I learned was it's not a baby. It's a business that you're putting together. It has a profit. It has revenue. It has expenses. You have to make profit, and that's it. How do you really emotionally detach? I think that was a very important lesson I learned out of it. Of course, it felt like I'd failed, but as I moved into the startup world, I realized that actually it's not failure. It's just a challenging time that teaches you something, and you move on to your next hurdle race. So you're in a race, but there are hurdles, and you just keep moving. Some are bigger, some are longer, some are shorter. The distance between hurdles. So it's not equal. And I think that lesson has made me so strong. I mean, you keep working on yourself all the time, but now it doesn't matter. Now it's like, okay, that's fine. Next one.
That's actually fascinating. Did that affect anything between you and your husband?
It's such a fantastic journey. We don't look at Natural Mantra anymore, looking at it that, oh my God, that didn't work out. But we look at it, my God, we learned so much out of it. And what you're not going to do list is such an amazing thing, because those are mistakes that you're not going to make going forward, hopefully.
Yeah. What you won't do list, right? Won't do again list is as important as to-do lists, right?
Yes. I think they're far more important, because now your list has just become shorter, hopefully, if you don't add more tasks. But I feel those are so, so important. Like people I work with right now, there is a moral internal compass that is, kind of constantly dialing in the right direction. And your intuition has kind of built up over time, which we don't really take seriously.
Yeah.
And being able to train that voice and listen to it over the years is another lesson that I've learned. And that's when I started actually working with founders of very early stage companies, seed funded startups. And I realized that I really enjoyed the early stage problems so much, and being able to grow companies from, their very early stages to about Series B. And that's my sweet spot. And, just understanding those challenges, the dynamic piece of it. And, instead of going into very large companies, I felt very restless.
Yeah, for sure. One of the interesting things with what you did was you write your own job description. Talk to me about how you actually went and did it, and what were your struggles selling your service, writing your own job description for a company that is still pre-stage to they're not even Series B.
When I reflect and I see the interviews or the conversations that I really nailed it versus the ones I completely blew up. And I will tell you a story about that as well, which was just last year. where I completely blew up in a job interview. But when I look back at it right now, what I see is the ones that I really succeeded is I went with the intention of we're equals. Like the person who's on the other side could be an investor, a founder, but I approached those interviews as equals, saying that I'm bringing something really valuable to the table, and I can take you from point A to point B. You have a problem to solve. You're offering me something. Do we connect, and can we really solve the problem together and make that journey?
You're actually approaching the table with the framing that, hey, you and I are actually equals. You have a problem. I have a solution for you, right? It's not a barter. It's not an exchange. Let's see if we actually connect and agree that your problem can be solved by my service, my solution. So we're equals at this point. I think right there gives you immense confidence and power, to not approach it as I need what you have. You have a job and I really need it, right? It puts you in a completely different frame of mind that says, I have something to give. You need me as much as I need you. So let's shake hands on this as equals.
Exactly. And
fantastic.
And the other piece here is, I don't think of it like I have your answer to your problems. Honestly, I do not know what the answer is, neither do you, which is why we're actually trying to see if we have compatibility, just like, you'd have a compatibility with your partner. Honestly, I feel that, when you're working with someone, that compatibility is so important, because that kind of overflows and spills over to your family life. So it's so important for you to really enjoy that relationship and be excited about what you're doing. Does that really give you joy?
So that was your approach to interviewing, and we were going to hear a story about where you bombed.
Yes. So last year, my mom passed away in February. I just didn't know how to deal with grief and, what was grief like. As I started interviewing, I realized that when I went into this conversation, the first interview went well. The second interview with the CEO of a company, very smart guy. And it was a really nice conversation. But the whole conversation that I went in, I forgot about all of these things of equal, and it never was there because my mindset was stuck with my mom and, dealing with the grief. And I was in a very tactical mode, which was like, okay, I need to find a job. I need it. And then the whole conversation went with a focus on like, okay, I can do this for you and this and that. And I came out, I still remember I was sitting right here having that conversation. And I left when that interview was over. I was like, what was that? And then I kind of sat down to say, this is not the Tina I know. This is someone else giving the interview. And after that, through a series of reflections, is where Useuristics was born. And I think at that point I realized, okay, that's it. I need to do something that makes me happy. Mindset can make so much of a difference between, okay, are you approaching the conversation as an equal versus like, I need it, I'm desperate. Or, I mean, you're not desperate, but when you say I need something, it comes from that angle.
Place. Yep, for sure. You touched on something briefly, and I was wondering if we can double click that. You touched on you didn't know how to handle grief.
If I'm honest, I still haven't handled it. I mean, I have tears in my eyes even right now as I speak about it. But grief is hard. It's freaking hard. And especially when it comes all of a sudden. And when my father passed away in June, I couldn't even go to India. And I still haven't.
I remember that.
I still haven't performed his last rites yet. The point is that grief changes you. What grief really teaches you about yourself. who you are, how you look at the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very unpopular opinion about death right now. It was actually, I have to give credit to my daughter. It was the first time she experienced death, and her grandmother, just like all grandparents, they pamper
Yeah,
the
big part of her
grandkids.
life. Yeah.
Yes. And, for the first time, she happened to experience death. And in the car, when we were going, I'm upset, not knowing what to do. And she said something so profound. She said, Mama, if you think of it, death doesn't happen to the person. It actually happens to everyone around that person.
Oh, wow. Yes.
So we are sad. And that's how I look at grief. And I am happy for her. But have I dealt with it? I don't know. I'm still sad. I'm still mad at her that she left so soon. But I'm happy for her. And I found many different ways to cope, finding solace and building habits. But I think that's what I've learned about death, and knowing that death is freeing up a soul.
Was finding a therapist your coping mechanism?
Oh, that's a great question. I started looking at a therapist early on, actually a month before my mom passed away, because I was going through a whole series of underconfidence and self-doubt, and I couldn't realize where it was coming from. There were a series of incidents that happened, and, I started having panic attacks, but I didn't quite know why I was having a panic attack. I had no idea. I mean, the world of therapy, I didn't even know at that point that, things can go back to your childhood. And so I started at that point, and I wanted someone who's much older than me, who will be able to guide me with the maturity and not just with the knowledge and the expertise. I just wanted life experience more. And I think I'm super blessed to have found him just in the nick of time.
Did you have any stigma even approaching the topic of going to a therapist?
To be very honest, my perception of therapy changed because I was here in Berlin. And here a lot of people talked openly about, therapy and the conversations with their therapist. And it's a part of their life. It's like going to a doctor, but for a different kind of doctor. But in India, there's so much stigma around it. And at that point, I realized, then I said, let me try it. And I have my whole career and whole life, I've been trying many different things. Therapy is part of my identity now.
How has it been with your new startup, Useristics? What has been your journey so far?
It's been great. I mean, this is my passion, and we're bringing together to help other founders and startups to be able to understand who their users are and the problem that they should be solving for. This is something that we're basically sharing our knowledge and being a part of the passion creator economy right now. So for now, it's been great. Like every startup, we're finding our feet. We're trying to see what's working, what's not. But at no point am I looking at it that, oh, this didn't work out. Okay, what's the next thing I can try? So the way I'm looking at my startup right now is it's more of an experiment, a sprint. And I think I'm so grateful for the startup world to have taught me these wonderful techniques. Cohort actually starts tomorrow, and super excited about it.
That's a great deal. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And we're looking at it as like, let's go through September and we're going to learn from everyone. And then we'll see what happens next. But if it was a regular job, and having to do 6-month plans, 12-month plans, not knowing how this will work out. I'm trying different things, but I can do it because I want to build it my way. To be very honest, I'm a big fan of the compounding growth curve. So it's like in the beginning, it's all flat line. You just don't know when you're going to climb the upward slope, right? So I'm somewhere there. And I know that this is a long journey. This could be a short journey. We don't know. So that's why I think what the approach that we are taking is, let's just live in the now, right now. And as far as building the content goes, we're just taking it one thing at a time. What is possible? I'm very conscious about the toxic hustle culture that has been popularized a lot these days. Just be kind to yourself.
I know with your experience, you're more a range rather than a depth person. Many of us, especially women, I think by nature, because we just wear multiple hats, we're really good range people. How do you sell yourself? Did you face struggles getting people to recognize that you're a range person and giving you, to your earlier point, giving you that equal partner relationship going into a conversation?
Thanks to growth, that, the T-shaped person has been kind of popularized, but that's also a rarity and it's very difficult to find. But you can definitely build T-shaped teams. Like between my co-founder and I, my co-founder has very in-depth expertise and research across the globe in many different markets that any startup would want to get in. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm the breadth, he's the depth. And that's what I'm going forward with. The ones who really understand where we come from and the value we bring. I think within like 3 minutes of the conversations, we are like, okay, how do we move forward? And as a founder, I think one of the things I'm learning along the way is that there are two kinds of founders. The founders who appreciate the value and the conversations and how having the user at the heart of everything they do is important. The founders who don't want to make the mistakes that other people have made and want like, okay, just front load us with all the wonderful insights, versus the founders who want to really make the mistakes and, want to learn from their mistakes, which also is I respect that 100%. But it's a matter of perspective. And then it's also a matter of niching down and finding who we are building for.
Yeah, for sure. That's a wonderful way to wrap up our conversation here. A lot of wonderful insights. Thrilled that we could do this together. So thank you for being on the 7/8ths.
Thank you for having me.
And that's how the cookie crumbles. I liked how Tina framed rejections. It's not because of something that is wrong with you. It is really a question of fit. There are some people that want to work with you and appreciate what you bring to the table, and some people that don't see the value in you. So don't take that as a full stop for whatever you're trying to be. She also talked about the hustle culture, and while it is applauded, encouraged, and maybe needed at times, it can quickly become toxic. So while you hustle, remember to be kind to yourself. She shared her approach to not just any interviews, but every conversation. Approach it as an equal partner. And if there isn't a fit, have the agency to walk away. And lastly, she shared her struggle with handling grief. There is no shame or regret in getting help through a therapist or a healer. Thank you for listening to this episode. Do leave me a note of feedback or critique. I am on Twitter @FarmNectar. Until the next conversation. Cheers, everyone.